The U.S. State Department is now allowing non-essential workers and family members to leave Ethiopia as rebel forces from the northern Tigray region approach the capital. The two sides and their allies have been fighting for exactly 1 year. And as Nick Schifrin reports, the conflict is on the brink of all-out civil war that threatens to tear apart the country. And a caution, images and accounts in this story may disturb some viewers.
On the one-year anniversary of the conflict, Ethiopian soldiers and officials lit candles for those they called martyred heroes. And while some protected flames from the wind, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed fanned the flames of war.
We will bury this enemy with our blood and bones and uphold the glory of Ethiopia.
Government airstrikes target civilian infrastructure in Tigray's capital, Mekelle. And the humanitarian crisis in Tigray is acute. 400,000 face famine. 5 million need aid to survive. But a senior official of the U.S. Agency for International Development tells PBS NewsHour the Ethiopian government and its allies have blocked all aid for 2 weeks by barring these trucks from entering Tigray. And now Tigrayan forces are advancing south. Analysts warn the country's fate is at stake. The crisis began exactly 1 year ago, when Tigrayan forces who used to run the country attacked a federal outpost. Federal forces and their allies from neighboring Eritrea and the Amhara region waged a scorched earth campaign in occupied parts of Tigray. But in late June, Tigrayan forces pushed federal Ethiopian soldiers out and kept going, from Tigray into neighboring Amhara and Afar, and now toward the capital Addis Ababa. They captured 2 key towns and allied themselves with a small militia from the Oromo ethnic group to which Abiy also belongs. Throughout, it's been a year of what the UN calls unprecedented brutality.
There are reasonable grounds to believe that war crimes and crimes against humanity have been committed by all parties to the conflict.
Marit Kahonen Sharif is the Africa Director for the United Nations High Commissioner on Human Rights, which yesterday released the first official account of the war's horrors, a joint investigation with the Ethiopian government.
The joint investigative team was looking into executions, summary arbitrary killings, into arbitrary detentions, into violence against women, gang rape, multiple sexual violence against boys, the destruction and the looting of property, livelihoods, the destruction of medical centers, and the fact that humanitarian aid has not reached those in need.
That list of atrocities, according to our reporting, was committed almost entirely by Ethiopian defense forces and their allies. Do you acknowledge that?
Yes, in the period of the specific investigation report between November and June, the majority of the violations were indeed committed by the Ethiopian Defense Forces, the Eritrean National Defense Forces, as well as the Amhara regional forces and their allies.
But since then, the report deals Tigrayan forces advancing and killing hundreds of civilians, sometimes with axes and machetes.
We have indeed documented several of those incidents where Tigrayan forces have caused tremendous suffering, whether it's to Amharans or other ethnic groups in the region.
The UN says its investigators were intimidated, harassed, and blocked from visiting the sites of massacres. One was expelled by the Ethiopian government.
The intimidation of the team was unacceptable. It was by regional authorities, by sometimes even by the civilian population, because you would have seen the incitement on social media.
But because UN investigators teamed up with Ethiopian officials, Tigrayan officials called the report, quote, an affront to the notion of impartiality. Are you withholding some criticism of the Ethiopian government in order to keep working with them?
Absolutely not. We are impartial to the parties. We don't get involved in the political conflict, but we're not neutral to the suffering of the victims. The intention of this report is precisely to put a legal obligation on the duty bearers, that being the government and the authorities of Ethiopia, to take the steps for legal criminal investigations to establish accountability. But to be honest, without the joint investigation, we would not have been able to access the victims.
The world is calling for an immediate ceasefire. Today, U.S. envoy Jeffrey Feltman is in Addis. But international pressure is not working. The Ethiopian military's second highest officer, General Bacha Debele.
We don't need to heed the advice of foreigners about how to deal with this conflict. This is our war against those who attempt to enslave us.
But there are fears the Ethiopian military cannot protect the capital. And the UN warns the stability of Ethiopia and the wider region is at stake.
Ethiopia borders on countries that already have very unstable situations. So the conflict, as it is escalating, can seriously destabilize the entire Horn of Africa. The ones who have any territorial control in this country need to step up, for the love of the people, for the love of the country, because otherwise there will be no Ethiopia anymore.
Tonight, there is real fear the capital could be overrun. The Tigrayan rebel army is advancing, and there's little to stop them. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Nick Schifrin.